Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi. Canada, Hugh Hewitt. Live from California this morning. President Biden addressed the UN yesterday. Not much there. In fact, the best summary of President Biden was provided by Senator Tom Cotton, cut number 19.
Martha, Joe Biden walked into the United Nations today and put a giant kick me sign on Uncle Sam's back. He claimed that he didn't want a new Cold War with China. The leaders in Beijing are laughing at Joe Biden in America right now because they've been waging a Cold War against us for decades, stealing our jobs by the millions, infiltrating our high-tech businesses and our universities with spies, building a military that one day might compete with our own. And Joe Biden not only says that we're not in a Cold War and that he'll fight to win it, he literally would not use the name China. He was like a scared child from a Harry Potter novel who wouldn't say Voldemort's name because he was afraid about what might happen. And that's to say nothing of the betrayal of our partners in Afghanistan or our allies who now question our resolve, or the fact that on Israel, the main point he made was trying to get Israel to go back into negotiations with Hamas, which controls much of the Palestinian people's territory, and just a few months ago was launching missiles at Israel at the very time when his party in Congress was yanking billions of dollars to refund the Iron Dome missile defense system. Yeah. Martha, that's a defensive system. It's not used for offensive purposes by Israel. It's used to protect innocent civilians inside of Israel. And Joe Biden says you need to sit down and negotiate with those Hamas terrorists. This was a disgraceful approach.
So Senator Cotton does a very nice job of summarizing what President Biden did, which was embarrass America yesterday and sound incoherent. I have one clip I just laughed at when I read it. Cut number 29.
We've ended 20 years of conflict in Afghanistan. And as we close this period of relentless war, we're opening a new era of relentless diplomacy.
A new era of relentless diplomacy. Right. That's what he calls it. Retreat, disarray, collapse at the border, America embarrassed, America shamed. At home, it's not much better. The Hill, let's do the rundown. House passes bill to prevent shutdown and suspend debt limit. Unfortunately, the Senate's not going to pass that because the House and the Senate cannot agree. The Democrats in the House and the Democrats in the Senate cannot agree on what ought to go into the reconciliation bill. So the United States is facing default, which will risk the full faith and credit of the United States. And they are trying, instead of reconciling their differences between House Democrats and House Senates, they run everything. They're trying to blame Republicans. Not going to work. Politico. President Biden finds few good options or allies on Haitian migrant buildup. Oh, what a surprise. Nobody likes 15,000 people walking under a bridge in Texas over the Rio Grande. Biden set to play peacemaker for warring Democratic factions. Also a headline in Politico. They're going to have Joe Biden figure it out. Oh, nicely played. Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, nicely paid. Also from Politico, Democrats fear Biden's domestic agenda could implode. That's because the squad and the crazies in the House can't agree with Bernie Sanders to agree with Maggie Hassan and other Democrats, moderate Democrats like Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, on what to put into the reconciliation to which the debt ceiling raise must be attached. And so we're going to have a default because Democrats are in disarray. Meanwhile, from the Washington Post, amid furor over border images, Biden faces Democratic backlash on immigration. Turns out that the crazies in the House want even more parades of people across the Rio Grande. 15,000 is not enough. They want 30, 60, 90,000. As you heard Senator Cotton say, Democrats yesterday voted to halt a $1 billion subsidy of the Iron Dome. From the Iron Dome. That's what Israel uses to protect itself from terrorist attacks from Hamas in the south and Hezbollah in the north. Iron Dome. The squad stopped it. Way to go, squad. Squad wins symbolic victory on Iron Dome funding. This is from the Times of Israel. Like I say, you really love the Democrats being in charge of everything, right? Haitian migrants revolt in custody, seize control of privately contracted bus. The Biden administration superbly operated Department of Homeland Security brought a bus to take the very few Haitians they're going to send back to Haiti, put them on the bus, and drove away. The Haitians decided, why don't we take over the bus and then we'll run away, which is exactly what they did. Well played, HHS. Some new tech, high-tech stories. Google's going to buy a New York City office building for $2.1 billion. We know who's running the country. J&J says the COVID-19 vaccine booster 2 months after the first shot is helpful. That means it's really a 2-shot vaccination. But no one will get J&J because the Biden administration screwed up its rollout. I hope they approve that. I hope they also approve the booster immediately. Apple is working on iPhone features to help detect depression and cognitive decline. I think they may want to keep that one out of the White House. No more apologies inside Facebook's push to defend its image. I'll come back to this story later. Facebook continues to, honestly, Mark Zuckerberg's a smart guy. I've met him a couple of times, had dinner with him a couple of times. He's a very smart guy. He's got to fire everybody who's giving him advice. Because for a very smart guy, he's got like the C team or the D team working for him. Facebook's oversight board demands clarity on rules for high-profile users. Mark thought this was going to be the deal. He'd have his own Supreme Court and people would listen to it. His own, quote, Supreme Court is rebelling against him. Again, fire everyone, Mark. Future of nuclear talks with Iran remains uncertain as Tehran expands enrichment activities. Did you hear that? What a surprise. The Iranians are cheating. Future of nuclear talks with Iran remain uncertain as Tehran expands enrichment activities. It's a Washington Post story. So Iran is back building a bomb. That means I think around January, Israel's just going to blow up everything. I really do think that's going to happen. It's not going to be Netanyahu. The Democrats won't be able to blame Netanyahu. Israel will not let Iran have a bomb. Biden might try and stop them. That's what the president does. He doesn't much care for Israeli defense, and the Democrats don't want them to have Iron Dome. The Israelis are not going to accept Iranian crazies with a bomb. In UN debut, Iran's new president rails against U.S. sanctions and, wait for it, denounces Israel. They had an earthquake in Australia. It was 4.9. That's not really an earthquake. And I say to the Australians, aren't you embarrassed to have this as a headline, 4.9? That's not really an earthquake if you live in California. United Kingdom is pinning their hopes on joining the U.S., Mexico, and Canada trade pact because Joe Biden's screwing that up too. There isn't anything he doesn't screw up. I mean, I hate to be hard on the guy. He's an old guy, and he's, had to go to New York yesterday, so he's really tired. Did he try and tell the Amtrak story yesterday, Dwayne? Did I see that in the clips? Did he actually try and tell the Amtrak story again?
Yes, he did a two-shot or a two by two, sitting in the chair in the Oval with Boris Johnson. Boris came down from Turtle Bay on the Acela. Joe flew back to the White House, and when they got to the Oval, Joe says, "Hey, Boris, I heard you took the Amtrak down.
No,
let me tell you
told him about Joey.
Let me tell you about Joey, baby."
Oh, that's just not true. Let's listen to that.
There is nothing true about
There's nothing true about that. Cut number 25.
Understand, Boris, I just want you to know, Boris, you came down on Amtrak, is that right?
I did, and you're a living deity.
I am. I've traveled millions of miles. You think I'm joking?
They love you.
Well, they should. I travel more on Amtrak than I think. If I were a conductor, I'd be number one in seniority. I got to tell you a quick story. It has nothing to do with anything. When I was vice president, the Secret Service didn't like me traveling on Amtrak because there were too many options for people to cause trouble along the way. But I insisted I do it, and one day they put in the newspaper, Biden travels 1 million, I think, don't hold me the exact number, I think it was 350,000 miles on Air Force Two. And so I, walking up to getting the train on that Friday, and a guy who was the number 3 guy from New Jersey on seniority as a conductor walked up and grabbed me, and he goes like this, "Joey, baby," grabbed my cheek. I thought the Secret Service was going to shoot him. And I said, no, he's a friend. He said, "Joey, big deal. 1,300,000 miles on Amtrak, on Air Force Two. You know how many miles you traveled on Amtrak?" I said, "No." He said, "With the retirement dinner. We worked it out." He said, 36 years in the Senate, X number of years at that point as vice president, average 131 days a year, 257 miles a day. Joey, you traveled over 2 million miles. Big deal.
Yeah, Boris Johnson has fallen asleep at this point. It's not true. None of it's true. I'll be right back. Joey Biden. Joey.
Now.
The most powerful organs of the state
are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I am Republican, voted for Trump twice. I sat in my brother-in-law's living room 4 years ago and said, you know, I think if Trump were to lose the election, he'd start a nuclear war. So I don't think that the concerns by the generals were out of line.
I honestly, and you sound like a reasonable and a nice guy, so don't take this the wrong way. I don't believe you when you say you voted for Trump. I don't believe that for 1 minute. No rational person, I mean, do you feel like you're familiar with President Trump? Do you realize that President Trump was the first president since Jimmy Carter not to start a war?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When black celebrities dare to defy the orthodoxy and status quo, they are immediately torpedoed by the machine. Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, you see what they tried to do to many different black athletes that speak out against forced vaccinations. Nicki Minaj has realized that this regime does not answer questions. They operate with force. This is not a government that persuades people. They are a coercive regime. The First Amendment of the United States protects the things that we are as human beings. We are talking beings. We are thinking beings. We are worshiping beings.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens or captives, we deserve the full story. We should demand that the media give it to us. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those considering a career. In politics and policy.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I am just reeling. I'm embarrassed for the country. The President of the United States yesterday told the same old Amtrak story. I'll play it for you again. Look, he's been telling this story for years. It's been debunked in about 2 seconds. I went and found the CNN fact check and the Fox News fact check. I put them both up at Twitter. This is not true, but he embarrasses the United States when the United Kingdom's Boris Johnson, who, by the way, can recite the Iliad in Greek for about 30 minutes without stop. Boris Johnson is a brilliant man. He's a little erratic and sort of fun, and he can be crazy at times, but he's a brilliant man. And it's like sitting next to the old uncle at Thanksgiving every single year and hearing the same old not true war story every year. And then after dinner, the daughter or the son comes over and says, Uncle Joe there, he's just making that up. He didn't charge the line at the Siegfried line. Here is Joe with Boris in the Oval yesterday.
Understand, Boris, I just want you to know, Boris, you came down on Amtrak, is that right?
I did, and you're a living deity.
I am. I've traveled millions of miles. You think I'm joking?
They love you.
Well, they should. I travel more on Amtrak than I think. If I were a conductor, I'd be #1 in seniority. I got to tell you a quick story. It has nothing to do with anything. When I was vice president, the Secret Service didn't like me traveling on Amtrak because there were too many options for people to cause trouble along the way. But I insisted I do it, and one day they put in the newspaper, Biden travels 1 million, I think, don't hold me the exact number, I think it was 350,000 miles on Air Force Two. And so I, walking up to getting the train on that Friday, and a guy who was the #3 guy from New Jersey on seniority as a conductor walked up and grabbed me, and he goes like this, "Joey, baby," grabbed my cheek. I thought the Secret Service was going to shoot him. And I said, no, he's a friend. He said, "Joey, big deal. 1,300,000 miles on Amtrak, on Air Force Two. You know how many miles you traveled on Amtrak?" I said, "No." He said, "With the retirement dinner. We worked it out." He said, 36 years in the Senate, X number of years at that point as vice president, average 131 days a year, 257 miles a day. Joey, you traveled over 2 million miles. Big deal. I thought they should name the railroad after me or something. But anyway.
They made the station off.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is saying, let's get out of this cul-de-sac. Here's the CNN fact check. Facts First by Daniel Dale from 2021, June of this year. Fact check. Biden keeps repeating a false story about an Amtrak conductor he knew. Everybody knows it's not true. It's like, well, by the way, at the end of that Oval presser yesterday, it's a spray. The Brits got 2 questions, and then the White House keepers and handlers of Uncle Joe wouldn't let him take any questions. Brett Baer talks to Peter Ducey about it, cut number 27.
Yeah, Peter, on that, I was looking at the pool report about the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the Oval Office, recognizing 2 British reporters for questions. And then it says President Biden signaled it was time for the press to leave without taking any questions from his own press corps.
And it's very unusual for a foreign leader who is being hosted in the Oval Office to just essentially start calling on reporters and kind of taking over the meeting. But it would be normal if they were having the traditional 2-and-2 press conference, which most foreign allies, especially close friends like the UK, are given. It's where the 2 leaders stand there, reporters are invited in, there are microphones, and they call on 2 reporters from each side. Yep. For whatever reason, the White House didn't want to have that. It seems like Boris Johnson might have thought to himself, well, let's just try to at least get our 2 in.
Elaine Keano of CBS News has objected on behalf of the White House reporters. Cut 28.
We're coming back on to just provide a bit more context. What we heard there was officials taking the questions of 3 British reporters. We heard Boris Johnson there call on some reporters towards the end. Our Ed O'Keefe, who is there in the Oval Office, was there acting as pool, reports that in that moment at the very end that we just heard there, he attempted to ask a question of President Biden about the southern border. He says in his tweet, White House aides shouted down U.S. attempts to ask questions. He asked the president about the southern border. You could not decipher what it was that the president said, but obviously...
President mumbles and then they get him out because Joe Biden is the president, but he can't answer a question. He can, however, retell a story that's been debunked for as long as he's been president. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in California Live. I'll be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The accusations were outlandish, coming as they do from a book that isn't even released yet, co-authored by Bob Woodward, who has been irrelevant for the last 40 years, has published books that are based upon supposition and tissues of lies, because this man has no access, especially to a conservative administration like President Trump's. But like those broken clocks that are right twice a day, it seems that this story, that General Milley, 2 days after the events of January the 6th, called up General Lee of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China to assure them that he would give them a heads up if President Trump, his commander, decided to attack China, is the definition of giving aid and support to our enemies. It is the textbook legal definition of treason. Earlier today, the office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who, let's be clear here, for those who are not wonks in the swamp, who haven't spent decades in national security, we have a peculiar system in the United States. What you just heard from Kirby, the Chief of the Defense Staff, is a lie. We do not have a senior uniformed officer in the chain of command like other nations do. The Constitution is crystal clear. America has one commander-in-chief. It's not the Speaker of the House.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great, people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there, because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work, at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the G, the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment. And I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it, and writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out, but these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, racist, racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem Now, Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
You know, it gets worse, America. Hi, Hugh Hewitt live. Joe Biden is about to wreck the UK-Ireland agreement on Northern Ireland. Joe Biden has told Boris Johnson, who is the Prime Minister of Her Majesty's domains, that he's wrong on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Now, I used to cover Brexit quite a lot when the issue was in doubt, but in fact, England and Scotland and Wales and Northern Ireland voted to get the hell away from the European Union. And that makes for a complicated situation on the Northern Ireland border with Ireland. But the Brits have a solution. Ireland and the EU doesn't like the solution that the sovereign country that controls that border has, and they don't want to change the old solution, which was the EU imposed solution. And Boris Johnson, being the Prime Minister, says, thank you, we are going to do it our way, because it's our country, which the United Kingdom is his country to govern. So last night, Joe Biden says he does not fully appreciate that's an understatement. The president says he does not fully appreciate the complexities of the Northern Ireland Protocol and is wrong about his assumptions. That is exactly correct. The U.S. president issued another warning to Boris Johnson not to rip up the post-Brexit deal on the border. On the protocols, I feel strongly on this. I would not at all like to see a change in the Irish Accord. At the end, having a closed border in Ireland. Guess what? They don't care, President Biden, what you think. That's like the Brits telling you that you don't want the wall built on the southern border. Okay, we know you don't want the wall built on the southern border. We know you want an open border. And if Boris Johnson came into the Oval and told you, we think the wall should be built, you'd look at him and say, well, this is none of your business. And by the way, just because you're of Irish descent like me, it doesn't make you better prepared to comment on a sovereign country's border issues. The Environmental Secretary of the United Kingdom, George Eustace, said the leader of the free world, quote, probably at the moment was just reading the headlines, reading what the EU is saying, reading what Ireland is saying, which is that they would like the Northern Ireland Protocol to work in the way that the EU envisages. The UK minister added, we think he is wrong because the truth is, unless we have a sustainable solution that enables trade to continue between Great Britain and Northern Ireland, then we are going to have issues, and that itself would become a challenge to the Belfast Agreement. What does that mean? That means a return to the Troubles. And the Troubles, if you're my age, you grew up with them on the front page, cars blowing up, people being shot, the Provos at war with the British Army deployed in Northern Ireland. We don't want that. So here's my advice to the president. Stick to what you don't know. Tell the Amtrak story a few dozen more times, and then wave your hands about the border. Speaking of which, what a catastrophe. What an outright catastrophe is shaping up there. It is truly. Greg Abbott gave a presser yesterday, the governor of Texas. Cut number one.
Right. So there have been reports for a while now about other groups like this that could be coming from other countries. And that's exactly why we are here, because we want anybody who's thinking about coming to Texas, whether it be from Colombia or any other country, that Texas is going to be responding. We have the law enforcement, we have the funding, we have the strategies, whether it be here in Del Rio or any other location on the Texas border. If you are targeting Texas to come to, we're going to show up in force and shut down the border. We're not going to allow the disaster that we saw here in Del Rio to be replicated by additional caravans coming from wherever they may come from.
He went on to talk about what the president and the vice president have been promoting. More Greg Abbott, cut number 2.
But let me start by making a point about the challenge that we're dealing with. We need to understand that if you go back a year ago, President Biden campaigned on having open borders in the United States. I'm sure most people, when they heard President Biden, either when he was as a candidate or as president, talk about open borders, they had no idea it would lead to the type of chaos that we witnessed just behind me for day after day after day. Contrary to what Kamala Harris talked about trying to solve this problem in the Northern Triangle, what the world is witnessing now is the open border policies that are being utilized by the Biden administration. It attracts people from across the entire globe, including people coming from more than 150 different countries. And when you have an administration that is not enforcing the law in this country, when you have an administration that has abandoned any pretense of securing the border and securing our sovereignty, you see the onrush of people like what we saw walking across this dam that is right behind me. Well, because the Biden administration is doing nothing to secure our border, because the Biden administration has been promoting and allowing open border policies, it has been the state of Texas that had to step up and address this challenge and work with the local mayor, the local county judge, and the local sheriff to accomplish several things.
It's a human tragedy. I have sympathy for 15,000 people who got the message that they could walk into the United States, and they're from a country bereft of any hope, and they've been in Chile they've walked from Chile to the border, and now they're walking across a dam and braving drowning to get to the United States, only to find out they don't actually get to come in, although they're coming in anyway. Greg Abbott had one more thing to say about the Biden administration immigration. Cut number 3.
Brendan Judd made a very important point, and that is failure to enforce laws that exist in the United States leads to chaos, and chaos leads to inhumanity. The Biden administration is a man-made disaster of inhumanity, of epic proportions. It must end immediately, and the way to end it is by the Biden administration stepping up and finally enforcing the immigration laws of the United States of America.
Now, I know you didn't like President Trump, some of you, but this kind of stuff didn't happen. You need to build the wall. You need to send a message that you can't come in. Meanwhile, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas was testifying yesterday. Here's his exchange with Josh Hawley, cut number 5.
200,000 border encounters over 2 straight months, a record in decades, for over decades. And you're telling me that this is success? Are you happy with what's happening at the border now? Is this success?
Senator, as I said then and I say now, we have a plan. We're executing on our plan, and we will continue to do so.
But you just testified that it's working. I'm just trying to understand. Is this success? Are you telling me that this is successful? Your plan is successful currently?
Senator, we are not finished in the execution of our plan, and I never suggested otherwise. We continue to do the work that we are required to do to secure our border. That is an ongoing process, and indeed we are executing it.
Are you happy with your progress?
Senator, we need to do better, and we need to do more, and we are committed to doing so.
In other words, no, we failed. There's an exchange with Senator Ron Johnson between Secretary Mayorkas and Senator Johnson. Cut number 6.
8 to 1,100 known gotaways, which would equate somewhere over 300,000 known gotaways for the year. If you annualize these figures, been a couple 100,000 people per month. We'll be up to about 2.1 million apprehensions. Add the getaways, 300,000 to 400,000. We're up to 2.5 million people. You have repeatedly stated that our borders are not open, that they're closed. Do you honestly believe that our borders are closed?
Senator, I do.
Ha! I love that. Well done, Ron Johnson. Credit where credit is due. Vice President Harris weighed in yesterday, cut 7.
What I saw depicted about those individuals on horseback treating human beings the way they were is horrible. And I fully support what is happening right now, which is a thorough investigation into exactly what is going on there. But human beings should never be treated that way, and I'm deeply troubled about it. The whole point is that we have to understand Haiti. I mean, talk about a country that has just experienced so much tragedy that has been about...
For a second, we know we raised a bunch of money for Haiti. This audience was very generous, and I'm glad. Haiti has nothing to do with an open border. She doesn't know how to answer a question. Jen Psaki doesn't know how to answer a question. The border came up in the White House presser yesterday, cut 9.
He also felt they were horrific and horrible. I don't know anyone who could watch that video and not have that emotion. Last night, our Secretary of Homeland Security put out a statement conveying there'd be an investigation, that he's going to send additional personnel. And I think it's important for people to know this is not who we are. That's not who the Biden-Harris administration is. And we're going to absolutely pursue that investigation and get to the bottom of what happened here.
They're talking about the horseback where the guy has the reins. It's not a whip. It's like, oh, we think something. It's all goes back to media blowing something up to miss the whole story in order to cover. Joe Biden, by the way, on a scrum answer on his way into the UN, says this about the border. Cut 8.
Mr. President, what's your reaction to the images from the southern border? Get it under control. Get it under control, or you have it under control? We will get it under control.
Get it under control. I don't think so. Let's check the markets yesterday, brought to you by Birch Gold. To get your Birch Gold, and some of you want to buy gold, gold today is at $1,776 an ounce. How patriotic. You can buy it for $1,776 an ounce. You go to hughgold.com, or you text my name, Hugh, H-U-G-H, to 474747. Some of you don't have $1,776 to buy a Krugerrand or an American Eagle or a Canadian Maple Leaf. I personally just buy the gold coins and put them in my safety deposit box. That's my way to diversify. But maybe you can't do that, and so roll over a portion of your IRA or 401k. I say 5 to 10%, diversify. Wealth is built in concentration. Wealth is preserved in diversification. Old saying that I heard for the first time a month ago, and it stuck with me. Diversify into precious metals. Do that via Birch Gold, which you can find at Hugh Gold. And they will send you a free information kit on rollovers into physical precious metal storage, or text HUGH to the number 474747. Lots and lots of great reviews for Birch Gold. The only company I trust, the only company I work with. And the only supplement I tape is this, relieffactor.com. Now, I am really not working out in California. I really am not. When I do the early shift in California, go back to bed after the show, and then I get up and I feel like just going to the beach and having lunch with friends who I haven't seen in 6 months. And so I'm not really doing much. But I'm doing much and feeling good about it because I take my relieffactor.com. Sitting around takes supplements too, you know. Otherwise, your back will go wrong. I carry in curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. I really am just sitting around. Normally I tell you how many miles I've walked or trundled or run, and I'm not doing that because I'm just sitting around. It's not a vacation. I'm working. You hear me live. And I'm interviewing people. I've got an interview this afternoon with a would-be Senate candidate from a different state who happens to be in California at the same time. I'm working. I got columns to write and stuff like that, but I'm not trundling because my schedule's off. Normally I finish the show and I go exercise. Nevertheless, I still take my Relief Factor. It's not just for people who exercise. It's for people who don't want to hurt just sitting around. So if you are one of those just sit-arounders, and I really wish you wouldn't, you ought to start walking and working out and getting into shape. But if you're just a sit-around person, relieffactor.com. Kyle Mills is out with a great new book. Vince Flynn is back. Mitch Rapp is back, and he's back here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because as somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on. I want to play this clip for you. This dummy is not only stalking and harassing this woman who wisely took out her phone to tape the whole incident, he's got a stupid badge on his ugly T-shirt. He's got a pin on that evidently says, "I'm vaccinated." Like, you got to go around and put a pin on your... Why don't you put a tattoo on your forehead that says you're vaccinated, dummy, you loser? Listen to this guy. Here's cut number 7. Listen to this exchange, because this woman whipped out her cell phone and recorded the whole incident.
Immunity a threat, but
Really? You're vaccinated?
yes, I am.
Oh, you are? Because I already have natural immunity.
Yeah.
You're not going to follow me around in the store and point at me to people, so I will video you.
So we have a state regulation that.
And it's not law. You're an idiot.
No. Oh, so you're going to insult me now? So my wife is a.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because as somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on. I want to play this clip for you. This dummy is not only stalking and harassing this woman who wisely took out her phone to tape the whole incident, he's got a stupid badge on his ugly T-shirt. He's got a pin on that evidently says, "I'm vaccinated."
Back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Many of you have heard Kyle Mills on my program before. He's back because Vince Flynn is back. Mitch Rapp is back. Enemy at the Gates is out. It's available at Amazon.com, at bookstores everywhere, and it's a great thriller. Now, I am a connoisseur of thrillers. People know that. I don't say that unless I mean it. I find ways to talk about it, even when it's a sponsored book, if I don't like it, but I love this book. One of the reasons, there are two big things I'm going to cover in this second segment, Kyle, and in segment 3. Technology. I don't know if you've ever read Shoshana Zuboff's Enemy, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. Have you had a chance to pound through that yet?
I haven't read that, no.
Okay, it's a Harvard Business School professor alum who wrote about how technology has gone so far beyond what we imagine. And in your one page on CAPTCHA, your one page, it's worth the price of Enemy at the Gates. It explains artificial intelligence better than anything I've seen in fiction. How long did it take you to figure out how to do that?
That wasn't too bad because it's true. Everything I wrote was true. I heard a podcast, a really interesting podcast about the guy who invented CAPTCHA. And he talked about that and how it worked. And so I used that as an entree into how you would track, these phones, how you track people's phones in a way that maybe people aren't aware they could be tracked.
I am blown away by this segment of the book because I think I stay on top of the technology news. I know Peter Thiel, who I think you've based Nicholas Ward on. I know Mark Zuckerberg. I've talked with these guys. I'm not a techie, but I follow what's going on. I had no idea that you could track burner phones. None. Zero. Zip.
Yeah.
How many people think burner phones are untraceable?
It seems like most people do. And, they're very difficult to trace, but, anybody who thinks they're not being tracked, if somebody wants to track you, it's just not that hard. We see it every day. If you're carrying a phone, you're being tracked.
That is the key revelation in Enemy at the Gates, is that people who think they're so smart and they've got a burner phone or they got a second iPhone, if they're carrying this around, and I'm holding up for my audience, if they've got an iPhone, it doesn't matter what edition it is, people know where you are, even if you're using a burner. And how you've got a pretty good mastery of this, Kyle Mills. Where does it come from?
Yeah, I love this stuff. I've always been kind of a little bit of a science geek, and I love figuring that stuff out. I have a big chart about all the calls made to every specific person and what time they were made and everything to make sure everything was realistic and that it would really work. So a little terrifying, the surveillance state kind of grows throughout the world, and I don't know that there's anything that can be done about it.
Earlier in the thriller universe, and I've been caught in the thriller universe my whole life. I'm 65. They would occasionally have jumps in logic where some super duper NSA scientist would invent a super duper thing, and that super duper thing would solve the problem. That is BS thriller writing. You have to be believable, which is what Enemy at the Gates is here because of that page. And honestly, Mitch Rapp and Riyadh, by the way, the Saudis aren't going to like this book very much, are they?
No, but again, that's true. The Saudis have really built up their surveillance state using AI and using Chinese technology, and other countries have too. You can't try. There's probably virtually none of London right now that you're not on camera.
Everybody should know.
It's something that's spreading.
There are no secrets. There just aren't any secrets. And I think Enemy at the Gates may drive that home better than any other book. There are a couple of other people who drive home the fact that there are no secrets. If you think it's a secret, it's not a secret, and especially where you go. But you picked Africa as the scene for this. Was that in an effort to prevent being bypassed? Were you writing this during the virus?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, unaware of how the pandemic would end, you left it out, I think. But how did the pandemic affect writing Enemy at the Gates?
Well, my process is typically to go to the places that I write about. I'd like to write the scenes while I'm there, so that they feel very realistic. I can walk the streets and kind of get a feel for the place. But obviously during the pandemic, I couldn't. So I wanted to write about somewhere that I was really familiar with. And I had lived in Africa, and Mitch's girlfriend has a house there. So I thought, well, that'll be perfect because I can do it from memory.
And his girlfriend has dogs that I never want to run into. Vince, I call you Vince. That's funny. That's a high compliment, Kyle Mills.
That's a compliment.
That's a high compliment, Kyle Mills. A slip of the tongue. We'll be back to talk more about Enemy at the Gates, America. It's in bookstores everywhere right now. Go and get it. Atria Books is a sponsor of this show, but I'd be reading this even if they weren't because it is such a terrific book. Congratulations, Kyle Mills. Now, I want you all to know, coming up, I'm going to be talking about the Democratic attempt to blame Republicans for their inability to agree on anything. It's really hilarious. And they've got big media all saying it's Republicans' fault. We're not going to get a debt hike. The Democrats have everything. They own the House. They own the Senate. They got Joe Biden in the White House nodding and telling his Joey baby story. The Republicans have nothing to do with that fiasco comes. The border, it's all the Democrats. The fiasco in D.C. spending, it's all in the Democrats. And you'll learn that when you listen to this. You got the news you got to have, the analysis you need right here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I'm gonna get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Three generations of imbeciles are enough, declared the Supreme Court in Buck versus Bell, decision of 1927. I'm reading from timeline.com. Quote, it is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility, society can prevent those who are manifestly unfit from continuing their kind. That decision was written by Oliver Wendell Holmes, and forced sterilization became fully legal in the United States. The case came at the height of popularity for the pseudosciences of eugenics, which maintained that negative character traits like criminality and stupidity were entirely the product of bad genes. The court decision that set the precedent for government intervention on the sterilization of women was the Jacobson v. Massachusetts. Thankfully, many decades later, there was a lawsuit that included Dolores Madrigal, who was the lead plaintiff in the 1978 case, which brought suit against L.A. County's USC Medical Center for its non-consensual sterilization of Mexican-American women in the 1960s and 70s. It would make sense why certain communities are apprehensive of the government forcibly putting medicine on you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
On January the 8th, 2 days after the riots on Capitol Hill, General Milley called General Li Zhongcheng of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China. In that call, he said the following: "We are 100% steady. Everything is fine." And he assured the communist general that there would be no attack on China. Now, on the one hand, I have to say the whole story is absurd because what attack on China? When did Donald Trump, in relation to January the 6th or any time, say that he's about to launch a nuclear attack against nuclear China? It's garbage. But Milley is the man who, remember, acted like a politician when he did a video apologizing for standing next to his commander-in-chief after he walked across Lafayette Square after days and days and days of rioting, hundreds of police officers injured, and the church of the president, St. John's Episcopal Church, was firebombed. Milley was ashamed of the restoration of order because Donald Trump was his commander-in-chief. So with that fact pattern in mind, with his assertion that critical race theory is great, should be taught at West Point. I'm white, and I want to know what white rage is. It is absolutely plausible that this man did what he did.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Leave her alone. Here.
Oh, is she?
What are you doing? This is between the two of us.
So what? Leave her alone. You got your mask on, you're safe. I'm sure you're vaccinated too.
He is. He has a badge that says it.
I do. So my wife is a doctor who specializes in infectious disease.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that she just doesn't know what she's talking about?
It's her choice. It's her choice. Just leave her alone.
No, there's a store requirement and a state requirement. It's not her choice.
You can't harass her.
It's
What are you
all of
even
our
in here
job
for?
as a community to come together.
You're not
and
even
make
shopping.
sure
You're
that
going
people are
around to
shamed.
harass people.
Then make sure that people are shamed
He was
when they
following me.
put the
He
rest
won't
of
leave
us
me
at
alone.
risk.
Put the rest of us at risk. He's vaccinated.
I know, and he has a badge on. Stop following me. It doesn't work. I know. We've already had it in the community, so I'm not putting that much. By publicly shaming me?
The public venue. Yeah, you're making a bad decision. You're a bad American.
I am. I totally am. And I voted for Trump.
Yeah, you're a bad person. You're a bad person for doing
He's
that.
not a bad person because my mom was vaccinated and still ended up in the hospital with COVID. It's her choice.
Yeah, well, it's very, very unusual.
It's not unusual. I just had
So
somebody
my
die
wife
last
is
week
a
of
doctor
COVID.
specializing in infectious disease. Are you saying that she just makes this stuff up? Is she
Probably. That she has a choice and you have a choice.
Yeah, well, the store has a policy, the state has a policy. You're putting the community...
All right, so you get the idea. The guy, and incidentally, if the guy were to be arrested, I think he ought to be arrested for that stupid hat he's got on. That should be a crime. That ought to be against the law. The moronic hat he's got. Tells you everything you need to know about this guy.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
These powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
This is one of the most significant developments in the history of our species, in the history of human beings. Now, the founders, before the American Revolution, before the French Indian War, what did the Pilgrims bring with them to the shores of America? They brought a civilization with them, the beginnings of Western society. They brought faith, knowledge of the classics, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, Aquinas, Augustine. The whole meaning of a civilization, they brought almost everything except the aristocracy. They started new. They started something from nothing. Thomas Jefferson continued. And they also knew the developments of the Enlightenment. They said, how can we build a system, build a compact, build a contract that will balance all of these things together and allow for self-government, allow for the pursuit of virtue, which is liberty, put licentiousness in check, have a system where tyranny and the potential for tyranny is put aside so that people are able to live quiet and peaceable lives. In the United States Constitution, it begins with "we the people." That's you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning, Glory America. Bonjour. Hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined by United States Senator Marsha Blackburn of the great state of Tennessee. Good morning, Senator. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you.
I want to review for the audience, because the media is getting this wrong, why Republicans will not vote to raise the debt ceiling. So I have to go back to the budget bill. Am I correct that the massive budget bill put together by Bernie Sanders passed with just 51 votes? Every Democrat, not one Republican, voted for it?
You're exactly right. And what you have to go back even to the beginning of COVID and look at how we approached this. And even though I kept saying the spending is too much, there was bipartisanship under President Trump and under Leader McConnell. But what you have with Biden in the White House and Pelosi and Schumer in charge is they're doing everything on a party line vote. They are the party of party line votes. So they're now saying Republicans have to help us pay for all of this out of control spending, the $7 trillion that we've been spending. Oh, you have to help us raise the debt limit. And, this is the mess that they've created. And no, we don't. What we need is some fiscal sanity.
So I love that line, Senator. They are the party of party line votes. I'm going to use that in a column. So having passed their $3.5 trillion budget, in addition to their $1.5 trillion earlier spending spree this year, the House has agreed we will spend $3.5 trillion. And they have not agreed yet on what to spend it on or how many taxes to raise in order to spend it. Am I right about that? The Democrats can't get their act together.
You're right about that. They just know they want to spend money, money, money. What they're trying to do is put in place all of these benefits and entitlements. They would literally destroy Medicare. The Medicare Social Security Trust Fund has already told us, hey, we're about to go upside down on these numbers. People can go online and read the annual report for themselves. But, Hugh, what they're doing is trying to push us to the point that you have more government control over individuals' lives every single day, less individual freedom. They're trying to push businesses to the point that they say, we can't stay in business and make a profit, therefore we're going to shut the doors. So this is the way they're inserting government control. And they think if they put all these programs in place, then when they lose in the midterm elections, we won't be able to get the programs off the books.
But I do want the audience to understand the inanity of what they are asking Republicans to do. They rolled the Republicans. You're right. They are the party of party line votes. They rolled the Republicans on the spending bill. They rolled the Republicans on the budget bill. The House rolled the House Republicans on the budget bill. Now they have to agree on what to tax and how much to spend. And when they do agree on that, they could attach that a debt limit hike, and it all could pass 51-50. They can't agree, but the debt limit hike is necessary now. So they want the Republicans to pass the debt limit hike. Am I correct? Not one Republican will go along with this charade.
You're correct. There's not going to be a Republican that will give them a vote on this. This is absurd, ridiculous.
So I want to explain this to the Steelers fans. And you understand, Senator, we have Steelers fans, so we slow down for them. And it's as if the Steelers were behind 9 points with 2 minutes to play, and somehow they miraculously score a touchdown, and so they do an onside kick, and they don't recover it. The Browns have the ball. And they call a timeout, and they ask the Browns to punt. Not so that they can score, they say, just punt. Give us the ball back to give us a shot at winning. The Democrats want the Republicans to punt on the debt limit so that they can try and score and get their act together. Am I correct in my analogy? That's what they want you to do?
I think that's a pretty good analogy. And see, the thing is, they don't want to be blamed for this. Look at every decision Joe Biden has made and look at how upside down his poll numbers are, and thereby how upside down the Democrats are with how they have led or not led since they took control. People are astounded whether it is the out-of-control border whether it is Afghanistan, how they have handled COVID, the rate of inflation that is taking place. And these are not the kind of things that the American people are wanting to see. When I'm talking to Tennesseans, they're just going, wait a minute, this is not, we didn't vote for Bernie Sanders, and this is basically what you're getting is a socialistic agenda being forced on the American people. And now the Democrats are saying, all right, come on, Republicans, you have to help us with this debt limit so we can't be blamed for it. And you've got a lot of Republicans like me that are saying, no, you're in this by yourself.
Yeah, we're not going to punt. We're not going to punt. We're going to try and win the game. And if you want to get together,
right.
Yeah, you can go agree.
The agenda of Joe Biden is the build back broke agenda. And people are recalling really fast how they felt under Barack Obama and Joe Biden.
So do they have a shot of getting their act together? Because, I don't want the country to default, but I don't want one Republican to be stupid enough to involve themselves in the destruction of the country's currency, inflation spiral. I don't want you to be complicit, and you'll be complicit if you raise the debt ceiling, because that will give them more time to figure out how to screw the country.
Well, and it gives them more wiggle room on money to go spend. See, as long as we say, nope, no way we're going to pass this budget with you, which $3.5 trillion really is closer to $5.5 trillion when you look at all of these giveaway programs that they're trying to put in place. And you just have to say, no, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go there. So it is time to start taking these things away from the Democrats because they've been on.
Every media outlet wants to blame the Republicans for the coming government shutdown and the debt limit brinksmanship. Every single one. I don't think you should care. I think you should use the punting analogy and say, they rolled us, and we're not going to help them roll us again. I think the American people understand games, they understand sports, and they understand not helping the other team win. And they don't care if the other team says, but they're cheating. When you're not cheating, you're just not going to get rolled again.
Well, and the thing is, when you look, they have a pattern of history on this spending. Look at what they did under the Obama years. They basically doubled the nation's debt. You had our nation's debt when George W. Bush walked out of the Oval Office and turned it over to Barack Obama. Our nation's debt was at $10.6 trillion. And 8 years later, what do you have? You're up north of $20 trillion in debt. This is what Joe Biden and Barack Obama did when they were in the White House. They doubled the nation's debt. And so now, with the spending that they've done, Hugh, we're pushing $30 trillion in debt. And if he continues this for the rest of a 4-year term, by the time we get to the end of the century, we're going to be north of $40 trillion in
It's
debt.
incredible. It's not sustainable now. As soon as interest rates go up, they will eat up the entire budget.
That's
Hold
correct.
the line, Senator Blackburn. And I'm sure you'll have a caucus meeting today or tomorrow. Just stand up and say, explain it. Say, no. The American people get it. Just say, no. We're not playing your games. We're not going to get rolled again. In fact, I think the Republicans will be very upset if the Republicans in the Congress get rolled again. Do you agree with me? Last question. Do you think the Republicans will be mad at the Republicans who are elected if you get rolled again?
Of course they're going to be upset. They want the Republicans to all vote no. And that's the way it went through the House. I think that's the way you're going to see it go through the Senate. The Democrats are determined to spin us into oblivion and into a socialistic state. And we're pushing back and saying, oh, no.
Oh, no. Well done. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee, thank you for joining me this morning. Don't go anywhere, America Live. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'll be right back.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Breitbart Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin admitted that the U.S. military may have killed up to 10 civilians, including up to 7 children, in a drone strike in Kabul on August 29th that was intended to kill an Islamic State attacker. The investigation concluded that the strike conducted to prevent what was believed to be an imminent threat to Hamid Karzai International Airport resulted in the deaths of as many as 10 people. On behalf of the men and women of the Department of Defense, I offer my deepest condolences to surviving family members of those who were killed, including Mr. Ahmadi. We now know that there was no connection between Mr. Ahmadi and ISIS, that his activities on that day were completely harmless and not at all related to the imminent threat we believed we faced, and that Mr. Ahmadi was just as innocent a victim as were the others tragically killed. We apologize, and we will endeavor to learn from this horrible mistake. Austin said he has directed a thorough review of the investigation into the strike and what strike authorities' procedures and processes need to be altered in the future. I don't mean to laugh, folks, but these people are a complete and utter joke. Whether you're talking about Lloyd Austin, whether you talk about Milley, there's not going to be any accountability. No one's being fired for this as far as we know. And I just don't see that happening. And then we still have Milley. And then yesterday I talked to you about the Biden administration paying $64 million in ransom, basically, because you still have Americans and SIVs sitting on the tarmac at the Kabul airport.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands,
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
that's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work, at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the G, the FBI, and I'm tired.
With what's trending, subscribe today at rumble.com.
How many times can I say no? I feel like Leader McConnell and Leader McCarthy, the GOP Senate leader and the House Republican leader, must be asking themselves, how many times do I have to say no? Do you understand English? It's like Joe Manchin being asked to break the filibuster. He says, no, I'm not going to do it. Kristen Sinema, no, I'm not going to do it. Maggie Hassan, no, I'm not going to do it. Dianne Feinstein, when she's awake, says, no, I'm not going to do it. But the reporters keep asking because the reporters are rooting for the Democrats. Now, here's the deal. As I just walked through with Marsha Blackburn, the Republicans are not going to vote to raise the debt limit. That's because the debt limit has to be raised soon. And so the Democrats have to agree on a big package of which taxes they're going to raise and what they're going to spend the money on and attach the debt limit to it. Or we're going to endanger the full faith and credit of the United States, which is a bad thing. But the Republicans are not obliged to help the Democrats buy time to figure out what taxes to raise and what money to spend it on. They're not obliged to help out. I'll go back through my analogy. Imagine that the Browns are leading the Steelers by 9 points and 2 minutes to go in First Energy Stadium in Cleveland. Hadn't happened in a while, but imagine that's what's going on. The Steelers, miraculously, given the septuagenarian Ben Roethlisberger, who is playing quarterback, score a touchdown. Somehow they score a touchdown against the Super Bowl-bound defense. And so all of a sudden, and they get 2 extra points. So now the Browns are leading by 1. And the Steelers, not surprisingly, try an onside kick, and they don't get it because the new rules of the onside kick make it pretty hard to get it. It does happen once in a while, but not as easy as it used to be. So the Browns have the ball. There's less than a minute. The Steelers have no timeout. They have 1 timeout, and they can't win. Browns are going to win. Yay, Browns. Steelers call timeout. Ben Roethlisberger walks over to see Kevin Stefanski. Mike Tomlin comes with him. Say, hey, Kevin, would you punt? Huh? Just punt. Give us the ball back. The fans would like a good game. Let's see if we can win. And Stefanski says, you're asking me to punt. Why would I do that? Well, because we want to win. Well, I know you want to win, but we want to win. We don't want you to win. We want to win. Yeah, but the better game. The better game if we have the ball and we're trying to score in the last minute. And Stefanski thinks, I know I'm from Minnesota, and I knew I grew up in Pennsylvania, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania, but they think I'm dumb because I went to Pennsylvania. I'm from Pennsylvania. And because I was in Minnesota. I'm not dumb. I'm not going to punt. And he doesn't punt, and the Browns win. So McConnell and McCarthy are like Stefanski. They're not from Pennsylvania. They're not going to punt. They're not Pittsburgh Steeler people. They're not going to punt. The Democrats have to get their act together. The Republicans are not going to bail them out. It's that simple. No. No means no. They're not going to do it. Bravo, Leader McCarthy and Leader McConnell. Let me check the markets, brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Definitely not Steelers fans. Yesterday, the Dow was unchanged. The S&P went down 3 points, and the NASDAQ went up 32 points. Amazon didn't. Amazon dropped another $12 yesterday. It's still at 3,358. Good buying point there for Amazon. But what happened to the 10-year Treasury? 1.324. Now, if you listen to my show every day, I always give you the 10-year Treasury because AndrewandTodd.com are sponsors. And they lend people money, usually for a 30-year loan, sometimes for a 15, often for a 10. They help people refinance their house. They help people buy a second home. They help people buy investment properties. They help grandma and grandpa get a reverse mortgage so they can stay in their house and never make another mortgage payment, but get some cash to help their bottom line because Social Security is not enough. That's what Andrew and Todd do. And they're wonderful guys, and people call them up and talk to them for hours on end. Andrew will talk to you for 6 hours. If you use that Steelers analogy on him, you'll have to explain it to him 4 or 5 times because they don't get football much. And they like USC. But nevertheless, 888-888-1172. They will help you figure out your loan. They'll get you a pre-qualification letter if you're shopping for a house. But they can only give you the best rate that the market allows. Now, they will do that, but the rate is based on what the 10-year Treasury is. And the 10-year Treasury is going up a little bit every day. Yesterday it went up to 1.324%. Don't wait any longer. Historically low rates. Go buy the house. Go help your kids get into a house, your grandkids get into a house, get your reverse mortgage done. Do it now. I'm Hugh Hewitt. I'll be right back.
Curious about what you're missing in the universe? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.huniverse.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.huniverse.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because as somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as is any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say, I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment. I can't go into the particulars.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific.
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it. Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
Then they see the Russia collusion narrative sitting right there in front of them and say, why don't we just say that he cheated?
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want because they literally feel like they're fighting Russian spies and Nazis.
Russiagate has been the most egregious abuse of everything that was supposed to have been good about our government.
The thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for is what they themselves were doing.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The commander-in-chief is the incumbent civilian president. You can't have a general as president. It is the civilian elected head of state that commands all of our national military assets, from the latest in Space Force to the Coast Guard, to our special forces, all of them, paramilitaries in the intelligence services, all of them are under the command of one man, a civilian. That man, as commander-in-chief, orders his Secretary of Defense to execute any operation.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Now, trending now on the
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Y lo siento mucho.
When the Spirit of God calls you to the throne, don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Congressman Mike Gallagher, Green Bay Packers fan. And this week I have a football question for him, a football analogy. Are you ready, Congressman Gallagher?
I'm ready.
All right. So the Browns are ahead of the Steelers by 9 points on the shores of Lake Erie with 2 minutes to go. And somehow ancient Big Ben leads the Steelers on a drive and a 2-point conversion. But the time is running down. They've got 30 seconds left, and now they're only down 1 point. The Steelers try an onside kick. The Browns get it. So they cannot get the ball back. So Ben calls a timeout, and Mike Tomlin and Ben go over to see Kevin Stefanski, and they ask him to punt. And he says, why? And they say, well, we'd like it to be a better game. We'd like a chance to score again. Now, here's your football question. You are a Green Bay Packers fan, so I don't know if you're going to get it right. Would the Browns agree to punt at that point?
No.
Right. So why would the Republicans agree to pass the debt hike ceiling? Because the Democrats cannot organize themselves to get their spending and tax plans together. Why would you ever do that?
The only reason they would do it is if they were as inept as the Cleveland Browns, which I hope in this case they are not.
Well, I mean, you meant the Steelers. You meant the Steelers.
Yeah, well, both. I mean, it's the whole division. It's just, the whole thing is absurd. Think about this. We've been in session for 3 days of the last 7 weeks. And so now Speaker Pelosi is coming to us saying we need to pass a last-second continuing resolution and then add on to that a debt ceiling increase. It's not even a debt ceiling increase, really. It's just it absolves the debt ceiling until December of next year. The whole thing is insane, and no Republican should participate in the Democrats' nonsense right now. They have the votes, theoretically, to pass this on their own. They're just trying to use us to get some political cover because they're going to try and ram through Bernie Sanders' socialist spending spree. This is Lucy and Charlie Brown with the football. To extend and sort of make your analogy even more cartoonish, don't fall for it, Republicans. Do not fall for this ruse. It's crazy.
They are treating you like lab mice. They think the Republicans are like lab mice. And having rolled you and abused you on the budget bill, and they did. There was not one Republican vote for the Senate budget bill. There was not one Republican vote for the House budget bill. They now think you're going to help raise the debt limit so that they can roll you again. It is incredible. And here's the worst part. The media are reporting it as though you're the bad guys.
I mean, the legacy media is thoroughly corrupt. But if you think about it, you dig into it, really what they think is they can fool the American people. They think the
Yes.
American people are stupid enough to believe this stuff, and they can at the same time they are the ones passing through trying to pass a historic level of spending. Right? We have the $2 trillion coronavirus bill, we have the $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and then we have the $3.5 trillion blowout where everybody gets a Tesla and it funds every Green New Deal priority under the sun. They're doing that. They are not operating in a bipartisan way. The president is bragging about passing the most progressive legislation since the New Deal, and now they're trying to blame us for the budget situation we're in. It's insane. The media being compliant with it is also insane, though unexpected. And again, just no Republican should fall for this.
So my question is, will they, because I think the Republicans are going to refuse to punt. I think they're going to be like the Browns, and the Stefanski says, no, we're going to win the game. We're not going to punt. We're going to take a knee and we're going to run the clock out. I think the Republicans are going to run the clock out, and I'm glad they are. Will then the Democrats be able to figure out what to pass? Will they have to go to the Manchin version, the least common denominator of the Democrats, on taxes and spending, and pass that with a debt hike?
Well, it's clear that the Senate is going to reject the continuing resolution that we passed with no Republican participation, thankfully, last night. There just aren't the votes in the Senate for it, and I think even some Democrat leaders have said it's dead on arrival. So I do think that will force them to come up with an alternative approach, but that will really continue to put Pelosi in a difficult position because she has a moderate faction that in the past she's crushed and forced to comply with her more progressive impulses, pitted against the squad wing of the party, which I think is driving their agenda right now. And right now, it's hard for me to see how she sequences this in a way that keeps all of her members on board. So I really don't know what Pelosi is going to do in the next couple weeks. And again, I just hope that no Republican participates in all of this. And then, Hugh, I don't know if you saw yesterday, but we were set to vote on the rule for the continuing resolution in the afternoon, and all of a sudden the House floor went radio silent, and we learned that they had pulled the bill because when the progressives saw the text of the continuing resolution, they saw $1 billion for Iron Dome funding for Israel, which is a joint venture, by the way, between the United States and Israel. It's a defensive piece of machinery that benefits us as well as our closest ally in the Middle East. But the progressives hate Israel, and so the Hamas caucus tanked it. They took the bill back. They had to take the $1 billion for Iron Dome out of the bill, and then we voted on it later that night. It's just crazy what's happening in the House of Representatives right now. Absolutely.
I'm amazed that enough Democrats went along to take. I guess they can only lose 4. So if the squad refuses to vote for something, they get it out.
Yeah. That's the squad is holding everybody hostage right now.
The important thing for Republicans to understand, this is a messaging battle. All they have to do is message that they broke it, they bought it. It's their bill. They jammed the budget down. They can pass a debt limit. They can pass a tax and spend measure. All they have to do is agree among themselves. They don't need one Republican. Thanos has arrived and he wants a battle with the Avengers, and the Avengers aren't showing up. You're the Republicans. You're not going to play. You're not. Will they stick to messaging? It's up to the message is very simple. Democrats broke it. They bought it. They have to fix it. Can the Republicans stay on message?
I hope so. It's going to require a lot of discipline, but we have to do that. I mean, we have offered numerous bipartisan outreaches to the Speaker and her team. We should have done this whole process through regular order, gone committee by committee, passed 12 separate appropriations bills. But the fact is, as I said before, the squad is driving the train, and everything is being sacrificed to the altar of the Bernie Sanders socialist spending spree. I mean, I think Pelosi, this is her last hurrah, and she wants to go out with a bang, and she wants to cement her legacy, and so she's going to try and jam through as much as possible. And I think there's a lot of Democrats right now who are, quite frankly, afraid of all of the energy coming from the far left. And let's hope that some Democrats in the Senate, particularly Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, stand their ground. But Republicans need to be disciplined. This is no time for us to be complicit in their games. We need to stand up for the American people, and particularly in light of all the other crises and manifest failures we're seeing from the Biden administration, whether it's the complete absence of security on the southern border. We have an out-of-control crisis on the southern border, whether it's the ongoing failures of U.S. foreign policy owing to our surrender in Afghanistan, and all of the lies, quite frankly, that the president told at the UN General Assembly yesterday. We need to be disciplined right now because the Democrats from the White House and certainly Democrats in Congress are simply not operating in a way that has the best interest of the American people in mind.
So I want to emphasize something. Nancy Pelosi will shut down the government next week. The government will run out of money. She will blame the Republicans. Chuck Schumer will blame the Republicans. In fact, the Republicans need to say the Democrats have the vote to pass a budget, fund the government, raise the debt limit. They just have to agree on what to do. We are not responsible for the government being shut. And the media is going to say the Republicans have shuttered the government. It's not 4 years ago. It's not 6 years ago. It's actually got nothing to do with the Republicans. You're just not playing this game. Will the Republicans endure the heat from the media that you shuttered the government, even when you didn't shutter the government, and simply respond, not our fault, we're not involved in this?
We have to. I mean, we can't be intimidated by the media. I mean, this is just a cut and dry case. I understand there were some past government shutdowns that were more complex than this, but to me, this is an easy one. We have to stay strong, stand our ground. We can't be bullied by the legacy media. We certainly can't be bullied by the far left. This is a time to stand our ground, and I think have faith in the common sense of the American people. Again, as I said at the outset, I do think the Democrats are playing a cynical game that depends on their ability to fool the American people, and I have faith in the common sense of the American people, and I think they can see through. I think they can see through the entire game.
They're going to shut the Washington Monument. They're going to shut Mount Rushmore. They're going to close post offices. They're going to threaten people's Social Security that doesn't stop going. They're going to say we're going to default, and they're going to blame the Republicans. And the Republicans just have to say the same thing. The Democrats have the vote to fix this. It's all they got the majority. They wanted it. That's all you have to say. It's there, but your members can't say anything else. I mean, they just have to say, it's not us, it's them. They have the majority. Can they actually stay on message?
Well, I don't, when it comes to the discipline of 200 some odd members of Congress, I can't promise every single one is going to act perfectly. I'll do my part, Hugh, however. So
the Browns would not punt. The Browns could stay on message. The Packers would fold, but the Browns wouldn't fold.
The now victorious Green Bay Packers, as my shirt says, you got to shovel your own snow. You got to stay disciplined, Hugh. You got to handle your own affairs. Now is the time for Republicans to step up and show that we are the adults in the room on domestic policy, on foreign policy. We cannot afford 2 more years of Democrat control of the country. At a minimum, we need to take back the House, pull the emergency brake, and prevent some of this nonsense from going on, because we are entering a very dangerous time.
It will be your responsibility in a year. It's not your responsibility right now. Congressman Mike Gallagher, good to see you. By the way, our mutual friend, Captain Vandroff, tells me there is no snow in Wisconsin. It's like the Minnesota people. It's all a myth. You just don't want people to come up there and use your lakes.
In September, there is no snow.
There's no snow. You people have been lying for years. It's just simply... It's just a myth. And he told me he's from Maryland. He's a Florida guy. He says it's as warm there as it is in Florida. Congressman, be well.
Thank you. Back in February.
Yeah, I will check with him. Let me tell you, folks, don't forget this. ReliefFactor.com. If you're going to shovel your own snow, even though there's no snow in Minnesota, cold, or Wisconsin, it's all a lie. I went up to Minnesota in the winter. There was no snow. And Vandroff tells me there's no snow in Green Bay. It's a CGI green screen effect. There is no snow. But ReliefFactor.com for places where there is snow, like Ohio. If you're going to shovel your own snow, get ReliefFactor.com. Now, I tell you, I'm sitting around doing nothing this week. I am sitting around doing nothing. I'm not running. I'm not walking. I'm eating graham crackers and sipping iced tea. I'm just having cheese whirls and drinking soda. Not doing anything. But I'm still taking my ReliefFactor.com. Because when I go back next week to the Beltway and I go back to my workouts, it's okay to take off a week once in a while. Your body says, hey, that's nice. But you don't stop taking ReliefFactor.com. because you're getting older even if you're not exercising. So if you're like me and you're being a sloth for a week, you still take your relieffactor.com. Get started in $19.95. $19.95 is all you need to spend to try 3 weeks of relieffactor.com. Also want to remind you, over at HughHewitt.com, you will find a search engine under Salem Now. It's the new widget. We put it there. And that widget will help you find any interview. I interviewed George Will yesterday. It's like the 5th or 6th time I've interviewed George. You can find them all, compare and contrast, by typing in George Will. You can do whatever you want. When we come back, we're going to talk to Brian Wesbury about what happens when the Democrats screw up the full faith and credit of the United States. Stay with us.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
If we would just offer the facts, how about this? Unemployment during Trump's term was better. Minorities were doing better.
Everything was better, Paul. The border was better. The military, our world standing was better. But the problem is, but unfortunately, but unfortunately, we got people like you who muddy the waters and then say, but the guy who brought all of that to us was a borderline deranged nut who was about to nuke China. See, that's the problem.
You're music. Putting words in my mouth. You're putting words in my mouth.
No, we're not. We all heard. We heard your words, Paul. We're listening to your words. Your music to Trump, to the anti-Trump world's ears. Your music to the Democrats' ears. I think that's probably why Milley thought he could get away with this, because there's a lot of people who will give him cover, and anybody who gives any space or any comfort to the ridiculous notion that Trump did anything to make anyone think he was a deranged, maniacal guy who was possibly capable of bombing China, you're giving aid and comfort and quarter to them, Paul. You're their best friend.
Well, I believe that if we would just give can you imagine being in a debate with Joe Biden and saying, folks, look, if you think the withdrawal from Afghanistan was done well, if you're happy with the way we're going, then vote for Joe Biden. If you think that we are moving in the wrong direction, my point is we have that Green and that other guy who's having...
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Still to this day, there is an all-out assault to the bureaucracies, to the progressives, from academia, to the tech companies, to the corporate tyrants, to crush the United States Constitution. This Constitution is what stands between us and them. And the Constitution is only powerful if we decide to use it. The Constitution allows the sovereignty of the people to continue and to exist. The story of America, as we look back at the peaks and at the summits of American history, we stand in admiration and awe and with gratitude to Hamilton and Madison and Jay and Franklin.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. On October 13th, my next guest, Brian Wesbury of First Trust Portfolio, and I are going to be in Atlanta at the Atlanta History Center with Alfredo Ortiz of the Job Creators Network and Herschel. Herschel Walker is going to join us as we talk about the Biden inflation. And you can get your tickets for that at am920theanswer.com, am920theanswer.com, and they are selling fast, especially because people love Brian and they really love Herschel, and they kind of like me and Alfredo. But we will be able to tell you then what's going to happen with the debt limit. Brian Wesbury, I've just been pointing out that there is no way the Republicans ought to agree to raise the debt limit in order to allow the Democrats to get their act together on how to spend $3.5 trillion. Do you agree with me?
Oh, absolutely. Hugh, do you remember, a little over 10 years ago that, people in politicians were walking around Washington, D.C. with the Lehman Brothers head on a pike.
Yes.
And claiming that, capitalism was irresponsible when it came to fiduciary responsibilities. Well, guess what? Now the government, all they want to do is spend and print and spend and print. And this is, I don't necessarily like having a debt ceiling on government, but what's great about it is it does provide a governor, so that a governor, meaning it slows the process down. It makes them have an embarrassing vote.
Yeah, a break.
Because we need to pause, and that's the word that Joe Manchin used when he was saying, I'm not going to vote for this crazy $3.5 trillion thing. We need to pause every once in a while. And so this is fantastic, and I don't think Republicans should help one bit. I think if Democrats really want to spend the country into massive, massive debt that it doesn't need at this point, let them do it on their own, and then let them face the ballot box. And I think that's one of the key things that's happening today is it's all falling apart. And every day the clock ticks closer and closer to November 2022, and every day the pressure builds. And I think we can get out of all of this, believe it or not, with no tax hikes and with no massive new Green New Deal. I think that's my hope right now. And I think if we do, it's not going to stop inflation, by the way, but it will keep the market from tanking.
It's also going to keep inflation from getting worse. Now, all they have to do is say, when the government shuts down, not our fault. You broke it, you bought it. All they have to say when the debt limit is reached, and I don't believe Yellen, by the way. I don't think the government is going to stop printing money. I really don't. But if they do, and they say our full faith and credit is injured, the markets will instantly say, well, that's a temporary pause. And they won't crash, Brian. They won't.
Right.
But even if they do, the Democrats can fix it in one day. They have the authority to fix it. I just am telling every Republican who listens, do not have no complicity in this crime against fiscal sanity.
Absolutely not. And here's the deal: when you officially reach the debt ceiling, so the Treasury has finally issued the last dollar of bonds, and they're up against the ceiling. The government, remember, I was the chief economist of the Joint Economic Committee of Congress back in the 1990s. I've studied this stuff. Newt Gingrich shut the economy down back then. All right, so the government can operate for months and months and months and months past that. There's all kinds of tricks to borrow from the transportation fund, to borrow from Social Security. I mean, none of it's good, or is it fiduciarily responsible? But this idea that the minute the dollar ticks up to the top and then everything goes bankrupt, that's not true. There's all kinds of tricks the Treasury can use. So this idea that we have a looming catastrophe, which Janet Yellen said, it's the real catastrophe is all this government spending and money printing.
And the Republicans do not have to be complicit in it, because the Democrats can actually increase the debt limit. They can pass a supplemental. They can raise any taxes that they want. They can spend as much money as they want with 51 votes. The problem is they can't agree among themselves because not all of them are insane.
Right, exactly. Yeah, there's enough in the House. And the interesting things, a lot of the progressives in the House, they won't go along with normal things. So with sane things. And so it's the part when Mitch McConnell, a lot of people were mad at Mitch McConnell for letting the first infrastructure bill go through, and I don't know how he could have stopped key Republicans for voting for that anyway, but tossing that into the House was like a hand grenade, because ever since then the House has been in an uproar, progressives against moderates, and they can't get anything out. Or that the Senate will pass. So yes, it's in their lap. It's all up to them. We'll find out if they're reckless and completely crazy about economics or not.
By October 13th, when Brian and I, and Herschel, are in Georgia with Alfredo Ortiz and the Job Creators Network, we will know the answer, and Brian will explain it all to you. But you got to get your tickets. AM920theanswer.com at the Atlanta History Center, AM920theanswer.com at the Atlanta History Center. Brian and I want to do this all over the country because I believe an educated electorate about the economy is the greatest bulwark against the Democrats. Honest, I would, if I were the Republican Party, I would just put Wesbury on retainer and keep him on the streets every day preaching sanity. I'll be right back. Hour number 3. Dr. Robert Jeffress is next. America on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
But Nicki Minaj is different because Nicki Minaj can't be controlled by the masters of the universe. They tried to suspend her from Twitter. They tried to kick her off of social media because of what she said. Producer Connor tweeted something out where he said Nicki Minaj is based or Nicki Minaj is right, and he lost access to his Twitter account for 12 hours. You see, that is what this regime is doing. They are clamping down on resistance. So Nicki Minaj did this Instagram live video. To give you an idea of how popular she is, she had 90,000 people watching an Instagram live video of where she was just literally the phone was just showing her ceiling and she was talking. Cut 77, Nicki Minaj says the obvious, something that we've been saying on this program for years. It's scary when they say you can't ask questions about anything. Nicki Minaj, welcome to the revolution. Cut 77.
I simply said we should be able to ask questions and speak. And it's scary when they start telling you you can't ask questions about anything.
Of course you can't ask questions about anything. Nicki, you're a little late to the party here, but welcome. In a unusual turn of events, we now have this broad-based coalition of people that are together, of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's asking questions. Again, I don't endorse everything he says. I just think it's interesting. The son of Bobby Kennedy is asking questions.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
And one of the things that DeSantis has pointed out, because they have had such a big wave in Florida, about half the people who are coming in and getting the antibody treatments are fully vaccinated. So this is not a situation where, it's the bad unvaccinated people in Florida that are getting it. They've got an awful lot of people who directly need this treatment now who are both vaccinated and unvaccinated.
Both vaccinated and unvaccinated. Ron DeSantis is holding the line, though, and he's asking Joe Biden, why are you withholding monoclonal antibodies, which is a phenomenal scientific breakthrough. It's a non-vaccination, non-inoculation treatment that works very, very well. This almost looks punitive. This almost looks like, oh, I don't like Ron DeSantis. I'm going to politically withhold Regeneron from you. Now, this is different than remdesivir, where remdesivir can cause a lot of damage to people, and it's very, very expensive. But Regeneron is not expensive and works really well. Ron DeSantis comes out and he says it's wrong to penalize Florida, sending us less monoclonal antibody treatments. Ron DeSantis wants to set up these treatment centers all across Florida. This would save lives. Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas are getting crushed by this monoclonal antibody decision. Why is Joe Biden doing this? Well, he says go get vaccinated. Well, half of the people that actually are getting the treatment are vaccinated, Joe Biden. Half. Does Joe Biden want to oversee the death of Americans for political gain? Sure, looking that way. Ron DeSantis saying you are literally penalizing Floridians for political gain.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as...
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
I am a Republican, voted for Trump twice. I sat in my brother-in-law's living room 4 years ago and said, you know, I think if Trump were to lose the election, he'd start a nuclear war. So I don't think that the concerns by the generals were out of line.
I honestly, and you sound like a reasonable and nice guy, so don't take this the wrong way. I don't believe you when you say you voted for Trump. I don't believe that for 1 minute. No rational person. I mean, do you feel like you're familiar with President Trump? Do you realize that President Trump was the first president since Jimmy Carter not to start a war?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
When black celebrities dare to defy the orthodoxy and status quo, they are immediately torpedoed by the machine. Kanye West, Nicki Minaj, you see what they tried to do to many different black athletes that speak out against forced vaccinations. Nicki Minaj has realized that this regime does not answer questions. They operate with force. This is not a government that persuades people. They are a coercive regime. The First Amendment of the United States protects the things that we are as human beings. We are talking beings. We are thinking beings. We are worshiping beings.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
This is Carol Platt-Liebau for townhall.com. It's not surprising that Joe Biden wants to turn the page on his incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan and the abandonment of U.S. citizens and our allies there. Almost as unsurprising as the media's craven effort to help him. Even as Americans remain hostage in Afghanistan and the Taliban flaunts the military equipment we left them, the news has shifted to other domestic stories. It's inexplicable. Their silence is a scandal. But sadly, we've grown used to seeing the media try to influence public opinion in a way that benefits their chosen candidates. Let's hope that this time, Americans see through the manipulation. So long as America is being humiliated by a group of Taliban savages and our fellow citizens are captives, we deserve the full story. We should demand that the media give it to us. I'm Carol Platt-Liebau.
The Pepperdine Graduate School of Public Policy. For those considering a career in politics and policy. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt live. I am always into using John Androzik's Story of Your Life as my opening bump because it's an encouragement song. Just the story of your life is unfolding. Make sure you make it a good story. You know who shares that belief? Pastor Robert Jeffress. Now, you may know Pastor Robert Jeffress from the radio. You may attend his church in Texas. You may have heard him preach on occasion. You may know he was a big supporter of Donald Trump and is. But he's also an author, and he has a new book coming out called Invincible, which I've got the pre-publication in my hand. I'm showing you if you're watching me on YouTube. And I love this because it's a book about encouragement. And I asked Pastor Jeffress to join me because a lot of people need encouragement and they need a plan. Good morning, Pastor. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
This is an encouraging book. It's really overdue. Did you find yourself surrounded by COVID-fatigued people in your congregation who needed a lift up?
Absolutely. You know, Hugh, in the Bible, mountains are symbolic of the obstacles that stand between us and God's blessings in our life. And that's why I subtitled the book Invincible, Conquering the Mountains That Separate You from the Blessed Life. And after 18 months of COVID and political unrest and racial division, I mean, people have been overcome with grief or loneliness, fear or worry. And in this book, I talk about how to conquer those mountains. You know, Jesus said, if you have the faith as tiny as a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And he wasn't speaking literally, but he was speaking truthfully. And these mountains that we're all facing, Hugh, we can conquer them without allowing them to conquer us. And that's what I talk about in the book.
The Wall Street Journal had a story over the weekend, Pastor Jeffress, that stated that Americans are angrier and crankier and more quick to get into an argument and cause a scene in an airplane or a restaurant or a supermarket store than in history. They're just worn out and fatigued. To which I respond, we actually have no real problems in America compared to people in Afghanistan who are looking at the Taliban trying to kill them, and that's useful to remember. But it's just also a religious obligation for people who are Christians not to be that way, correct?
Oh, that's exactly right. And Hugh, it's been a little bit discouraging for me as a pastor to see, you know, evangelical Christians kind of at the forefront of a lot of this division. And look, you know, we can have disagreements about issues like the vaccines or other things that are going on. But look, you know, I like what St. Augustine said. He said, in the essentials, unity, in the non-essentials, liberty, but in all things, charity. We don't have to be mad and hateful and foaming at the mouth to have a difference of opinion.
I also like early in Invincible, you write about the, quote, grandeur of your life, close quote, and you talk about your father being an amateur mountaineer. Now, I've climbed exactly one mountain in my life, Mount Sherman. Almost killed me, Pastor. I don't get people who climb mountains, but I'm glad I did it, and I'm sure you admired your father for doing it. But you do get some pretty good looks when you're up there. And so is that what you're talking about, the grandeur of your life? When you look at it, it really is a great deal we've got going.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, so many times we look at our problems and we measure them by our own strength and ability instead of by God's greatness. And I think that causes fear. That's one of the mountains I talk about conquering in our life. You know, the tallest building in the world is 2,700 feet. It's in Dubai. And it's a big building, but compared to Mount Everest, 29,000 feet, it's a molehill. And I think one reason we get fearful as Christians or worried as we look at the challenges we face and we compare them to our own strength and ability, we ought to compare our challenges to the power of God and understand His grandeur. It gives us a whole new perspective.
Let me give people the quick rundown of your approach. Moving from doubt to faith, moving from guilt to repentance, moving from anxiety to peace, moving from discouragement to hope, moving from fear to courage, moving from bitterness to forgiveness, moving from materialism to contentment, big one, moving from loneliness to companionship, moving from lust to purity, and then moving from grief to acceptance. Now, this is clearly a pastor's book, by a pastor, for pastors, and the people that they pastor. But it's based upon life experience. How many years have you been pastoring, Pastor?
About 43 years.
So you've run into a lot of sad people.
Well, that's right, and that's one of the things we talk about. The last chapter is about moving from grief to acceptance. Over these 18 months, a lot of your listeners have lost important things or people to them through death, the loss of a job, other losses. And the question they ask me is, Pastor, when will we ever go back to feeling normal? And the fact is, we'll never go back to normal. There's a new normal, though, that we can experience. And, I tell people grief is a lot like going into a dark tunnel. The bad news is it's dark, it's lonely, it's frightening. The good news is once you've started in, you're already on the way out. The Psalm said, sorrow endures the evening, but joy comes in the morning.
Now, if I had a producer, we would go out with the song Red Rubber Ball, because that one is, you're probably old enough to remember that. Hey, the things are going to work out. The sun's going to come up. Invincible is very much that kind of a book. But I want to close by talking especially, my audience is younger than most talk show audiences. My audience is mostly 70% have a child in the house, so they're not going to get this. But for the 30% that are older, it's been really rough on seniors, Pastor, because everything has changed in a hurry in 18 months. What's your specific word for older people about what the country's gone through and where it's going?
Hugh, I've seen that, especially among senior adults, there's a lot of worry, a lot of fear out there right now. What if I catch the virus? What if I die? What if? And, there's a great prescription in the New Testament. Paul said, don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything. A friend of mine says, take out a piece of paper, put at the top my worry list everything you can think of to worry about. It may take 2 or 3 pages. Then when you've exhausted it, go to the top of your page, scratch out the word worry, and put the word prayer. Turn your worry list into your prayer list. That's what Paul says. Don't worry. Instead, pray, and the peace of God will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus.
That's a great word. I want to close on this. I applaud you. You got the vaccine early like I did. You tell people that you got the vaccine. And are you going to get the booster, or have you already had the booster?
I'm in the process.
Yeah, I'm going to get it, I think, today. I'm eligible as of today. I think it's been 6 months. I'm going to go get in line. Did anyone in your church get mad at you for getting vaccinated?
Yes, absolutely. And look, I tell people being a Christian doesn't mean being stupid. When I get on the freeway every morning, I pray for my safety, but I also buckle my seatbelt. And I think we need to do the same thing with this vaccine and see it as a gift from God. If we believe in the sanctity of life, we ought to protect life inside the womb, but also life outside the womb.
Pastor, that's such a great word. Did you get, you get a lot of attention whenever you supported President Trump. Any of the legacy media pay much attention to your getting vaccinated and getting the booster?
Yes, quite a bit, actually. Like I said, pro and con, but it's the right thing to do, I think. And I'm grateful to God. I'm grateful to President Trump for having the foresight to do Operation Warp Speed. And I think, Joe Biden's doing the best he can in getting it distributed. This isn't a Republican or Democrat issue, Hugh. It's an American issue.
Pastor Jeffress, well said. That was really worth it. Invincible's going to sell and sell and sell and sell. So congratulations on Invincible. A good word, well spoken is, it's just wonderful to have. Thank you, Pastor.
Always enjoy being with you. Thanks, you.
One of the upbeat guys out there, and I like upbeat people. I believe in encouraging audiences. I also believe in checking the market, which I do every day because of AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew and Todd help you borrow money if you want to go out there. You're going to set sails to your hopes and not your fears. You're going to go out and buy a house. You need to be pre-qualified to do that. You got to have a letter in your hand that says you can borrow X amount of dollars so that the people selling the house know you're not just a looky-loo and you're not going to bedevil them. The 10-year treasury is at 1.324%. That's not the rate you'll get on a 30-year mortgage. You'll be in the twos if you've got good credit. AndrewandTodd.com will help you get good credit, or they'll help you get the best rate you can possibly get. But you have to take the first move. You've got to go to AndrewandTodd.com, fill out the questions, or call them at 888-888-1172. AndrewandTodd.com. Great Christian men. I know them well. 888-888-1172. Stay around. I'll be right back on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Curious about what you're missing in the universe? The After Show? 21 years of Hugh Hewitt shows on demand? Go to www.universe.com right now, where it's only 99 cents to join for the first month. www.universe.com.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The accusations were outlandish, coming as they do from a book that isn't even released yet, co-authored by Bob Woodward, who has been irrelevant for the last 40 years, has published books that are based upon supposition and tissues of lies, because this man has no access, especially to a conservative administration like President Trump's. But like those broken clocks that are right twice a day, it seems that this story, that General Milley, 2 days after the events of January the 6th, called up General Lee of the People's Liberation Army of Communist China to assure them that he would give them a heads up if President Trump, his commander, decided to attack China, is the definition of giving aid and support to our enemies. It is the textbook legal definition of treason. Earlier today, the office of the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, who, let's be clear here, for those who are not wonks in the swamp, who haven't spent decades in national security, we have a peculiar system in the United States. What you just heard from Kirby, the Chief of the Defense Staff, is a lie. We do not have a senior uniformed officer in the chain of command like other nations do. The Constitution is crystal clear. America has one commander-in-chief. It's not the Speaker of the House.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
You wrote My Way for your friend Frank Sinatra. Now, all of us, I think in some ways the greatest thing anybody can do is to do something that's so great, people don't even wonder who did it. They just assume it was always there. The same thing with the theme song from The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson's Tonight Show. You wrote that. Let's go there, because that's just a monumental moment in both of your careers. I mean, he had already had 20 careers up to this moment.
It was Vegas, Rat Pack. I got to know him in the 60s. I hung around him. Let's not forget Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, very talented men. But up until 68, I was still writing. I was living in Europe, which I loved. I had the gravitas of being a writer because of The Tonight Show, The Longest Day, etc. So when I met him in Miami, where we used to work, at the Fontainebleau Hotel, he was doing a film. I was performing. He said, I'm quitting show business. I'm going to retire. I've had enough. Rat Pack's over. I'm being hassled by the G, the FBI, and I'm tired. I'm getting out of here. But I'm going to do one more album. With that, and him telling me that he was quitting and retiring and believing him, I couldn't believe it. So I went back to New York, where I was living at the time, and I'm sitting in my apartment. And I started metaphorically with, and now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. And I started writing it as if he were writing it, and writing words I would never write as a craftsman, ate it up, spit it out, but these were the kind of words that he used. So I finished it 5 hours later. I called him at Caesar's Palace, where he was doing one of his last engagements. And I said, sir, I've got something I think you might like for the album. He said, bring it out.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery. There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store, or go to Salem Now, Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
Good morning, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I know there's bad news everywhere. Look, if you're an Afghan, it's terrible news. And I can't put a happy face on that. But if you're an American, you live in America, you got no problems. You really don't have any problems. Even if you're homeless, it's better to be homeless in America than in Afghanistan. And if you're just an ordinary American and you're going to work this morning and you got a doofus for a boss, or you don't have a producer, gosh, if I had a producer. Well, one of those things, if any of that stuff is in your life this morning, just remember, hey, it's going to be all right. Hey, the worst is over now. The sun is out and shining like a red rubber ball. Now, if you're sick, that's not always true. But the best medicine in the world is in the United States, and you can be grateful for that. And the best people are in the United States. 9 out of 10, 99 out of 100 aren't jerks. Yesterday, the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I were driving to a reception, and there was a real jerk on the road, a real jerk. And since I wasn't driving, I wasn't angry because I was busy on my phone. And so the fetching Mrs. Hewitt may have been a little bit upset, to which I responded, concentrate on the 99 drivers who are being good out there. They're pretty good, because that's actually the only way to go through life. If you let the jerks get to you, life is really not worth having. Now, I got a question for my audience, 1-800-520-1234. Unless you just tuned in, I have been preaching one thing. The Republicans have to just say no. They're not going to vote to raise the debt limit. They're not going to vote for the continuing resolution. They might have voted for the continuing resolution if it didn't have the debt limit on it. But the debt limit is the gateway drug to the fiscal insanity of the Bernie budget. So they can't vote for the debt limit. The Democrats have to vote for the debt limit. The Republicans have to just say no. And every media outlet, MSNBC, CNN, the networks, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, every columnist, every commentator who's not named Hugh or otherwise sane is going to say it's the Republican fault that the government shuts down next week. It's the Republicans' fault that we're getting close to the debt limit. It's not. It's not. The Democrats can fix it all. They have the majority. They passed the budget resolution. They have the reconciliation authority. All they have to do is agree among themselves on what to do. It's not our problem. I'm a Republican. I'm always been upfront about it. 1 in 20 people in the media will honestly tell you whether they're a Republican or a Democrat. I am a Republican. I don't buy that pretend stuff. You have to be not. Everyone's a partisan. They just tell you whether or not they are. Will the Republican? This is my question. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Connects you to Hugh Hewitt. I heard one of my colleagues yesterday give their number so fast that no one in their right mind could have remembered it. I'm not talking about you, Dennis. 1-800-520-1234. You see, Dennis never actually gives his number. 1-800-520-1234. Dennis expects you to have memorized his number. Will the Republicans maintain message discipline? Will they actually just say no? Will they be cowed and beaten and made to go into the back of the room and say they're sorry and vote to open the government and pass the debt limit because people are saying bad things about them on NPR? And NPR, for all I know, Stephen Inskeep's a fine journal. I like Stephen. He's a really smart guy. I have him on whenever he writes a book. But NPR is going to be blaming the Republicans from the morning that they go on the air to night when they go off, and they never go off. Facebook and Google will set the algorithms to blame the Republicans. That. They're all going to blame the Republicans. Will the Republicans have the spine and follow Mitch and Kevin and just say no? 1-800-520-1234. Connection to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Simon & Schuster's Enemy at the Gates, the latest in the Vince Flynn series by Kyle Mills.
Because Trump knew how to play their game, so they had to destroy him. They're used to these Republicans. Well, yes, I'm so sophisticated. I'm smart, and I can run the Senate perfectly, and I can run the House perfectly. So we're going to accomplish A, B, and C. But when it comes to advancing our agenda beyond the courts, that's where I stop. They knew they didn't have fighters. We don't. Who do we have? Who do we have right now in the Republican Party? A handful of people in the Senate, a handful of people in the House that you know are going to press a conservative agenda going forward. But they hated Trump, not because he was unsophisticated. They hated him because he knew them. And that's the same reason they hated Larry Elder. Because they knew that he would cause damage to the Democrat Party. I look at these Democrats that come out and, Nancy Pelosi overseas talking about, she's admitted that, yeah, basically China, there's a genocide of Uyghurs. But she believes that man-made climate change is a bigger issue. So that America has to continue to work with China. That's why they didn't care about, and why they don't care about now, Americans that are still left behind and being held hostage. Americans are still being held hostage. And we're silent.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because if somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around, and if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on. I want to play this clip for you. This dummy is not only stalking and harassing this woman who wisely took out her phone to tape the whole incident, he's got a stupid badge on his ugly T-shirt. He's got a pin on that evidently says, I'm vaccinated. Like, you got to go around and put a pin on your... Why don't you put a tattoo on your forehead that says you're vaccinated, dummy, you loser? Listen to this guy. Here's cut number 7. Listen to this exchange, because this woman whipped out her cell phone and recorded the whole incident.
Immunity a threat, but...
Really? You're vaccinated?
Yes, I am.
Oh, you are? Because I already have natural immunity.
Yeah.
You're not going to follow me around in the store and point at me to people, so I will video you.
So we have a state regulation that...
And it's not law. You're an idiot.
No. Oh, so you're going to insult me now. So my wife is a...
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I will get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
Three generations of imbeciles are enough, declared the Supreme Court in Buck versus Bell. Decision of 1927. I'm reading from timeline.com. Quote, it is better for all the world if instead of waiting to execute degenerate offspring for crime or to let them starve for their imbecility. It would make sense why certain communities are apprehensive of the government forcibly putting medicine on you.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I have been spending most of the morning on one thing. It may take me a few weeks. I'm going to say the same thing. Just say no. You see, the government's going to shut down next week because they're out of money. And the Democrats are passing a continuing resolution stopgap bill to fund the government, but they're attaching a hike in the debt limit to it. So the Republicans aren't going to vote for it. Now, they'll pass the CR if they send it over. They don't want to shut the government down, but they're not going to pass the debt limit hike. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy have said for months, we are not going to pass a debt limit increase unless it's attached to the budget and the tax and spend bill that you authorized on a straight party line vote. You broke it. You bought it. We're not going to help you bust the budget. Now, we're out of borrowing capacity. That's called the debt limit. And that means it's got to be raised. And in the past, both parties have agreed to raise it. But in the past, both parties have not agreed to spend $7 trillion in 1 year, led by a socialist from Vermont. So the Democrats have lost their mind. And so the debt limit approaches, and Mitch and Kevin say, we're not going to help you raise it. You passed a budget resolution, which means you can pass as many tax hikes as you want, as much spending as you want, up to $3.5 trillion in 1 year. You can rewrite any tax and spend portion of the law that you want, and you can do it with 51 votes, but you have to raise the debt ceiling to do that. And since you rolled us, we're not going to help you destroy the country's fiscal integrity. We're already in bad shape. We have no part of it. None. You do it. You wanted the majority in the Senate, you got it. You wanted the majority in the House, you got it. You wanted the White House, you have it, sort of, when he's awake. You have it all. Just say no. And thus far, not one Republican has voted for any of this nonsense, and they're not going to. And so the Democrats are going to have to agree among themselves on exactly what they want, or we're going to go past the debt limit and the government's going to shut down. Will the Republicans keep their spine? Tim in Detroit, what do you think? Hello, Tim in Detroit.
Hey, I'm
Hello?
here. Hey,
Yep. Yeah, you're there. Go ahead, my friend.
I am driving in the rain for the next couple days, and as sure as I know the red rubber ball will show up in a couple of days, I am sure the Republicans will disappoint me again, as they always have, and roll.
No, they won't. They will not roll over. Mitch has got them. I honestly think they're not going to roll over, but you're not an optimist.
Not what I've seen in the past. You know, they constantly sit there and go, "Oh, let's play nice." You know, maybe they'll like us again this time, and they do it every time, and they disappoint me every time. Unfortunately, you know. So, but
you know what's
anyway,
different this time, Tim?
I do hope you are right.
In the past, the Republicans have had at least 1/2 of 1/3 of the Congress, so they've been partly responsible for the government. Right now, the Democrats have all they need to fix everything. They have the power. Correct. So the Republicans can, if they just repeat after me, Democrats won the elections. Democrats have all the power. Democrats only need to agree among themselves. We're not helping. They have a way out. They don't have to play and the media will beat up on them. It doesn't matter. All you have to say, Democrats won the House, they won the Senate, they won the White House. They can fix this themselves, and they can.
I hope and pray that you are correct.
All right, Tim. You're a Michigander. That's great. I got a Michigander on my side. Thomas in San Antonio, Texas. Good morning, Thomas.
Hey, you.
Good morning. What say you?
There's 3 reasons I think they're going to cave. Murkowski, Collins, and, of course, that wonderful senator from Utah.
Look, I do not believe any of those 3 will cave, but guess what? Doesn't matter, because it takes 10 Republicans to cave.
we got a possibility, but I'm telling you now, I've just been, I've been jilted too many times at the altar.
Well, we have been jilted. I remember the Gang of 14. I was talking to John Kyle outside of AIPAC. I just talked to Joe Biden. He was a senator then. And John Kyle was sitting with me, and we were about to use the nuclear option to approve judges by 51 votes. And we were right there. We were at the altar. We were going to do it. And John Kyle got a call on his phone, and John McCain had put together the Gang of 14, and we blew it. We punted. We did the Lucy and the football. Not this time. Not this time. Thank you, Thomas. Bruce and Whittier, do you have confidence that the Republicans won't fold?
They will. The Republican Party is weak. They don't stick together. The Democrat Party always sticks together. And what is the word limit? What does that mean? It means nothing. Debt limit?
But what if you're wrong, Bruce? Will you call me back and say, Hugh, you were right, they didn't fold?
Right, but what is the definition of debt limit? A limit.
The amount of money you can legally print.
Okay, so why even use limit?
Because they have to raise it every time. It is, as Brian Wesbury says, a break. It makes you stop and look at how big the debt is, and then they blow past it. But they do have to stop.
Yeah.
That's a limit. It's like the speed limit. What are you driving? Are you driving right now?
I am not.
Okay, because if you were driving, I'd bet you would be over the speed limit. And you break it every time, but that doesn't mean the limit's not there. And if you get a ticket, you get a ticket. So that's like the debt limit. In any event, the key is the Republicans won't blink. I don't think so. Thank you, Bruce. Stephen, Cherry Hill, New Jersey, 1-800-520-1234. What do you think, Stephen?
Yeah, I'd love to be an optimist here, but what evidence is there that the Republicans are going to stay together? They always seem to fold. The other callers are right. Why would they break their historical pattern?
Because they want to win in 2022. Because everyone is looking at them. Because everyone knows they lost the Senate, they lost the House, they lost the White House. It's never happened before in one election where an incumbent president not only lost the White House, but the Senate and the House. And so Mitch and Kevin want the majority back. Yeah. The only way to get it is to show why they need it.
But the other guys don't have the courage. They've shown that so many of them will cave with the media pressure, unfortunately, because they're not that hardball Republican. They're still softies.
They are going to play hardball this time. Believe me. Mike in Detroit, Michigan. I have got only skeptics. What do you think, Mike? Are the Republicans going to hold their position?
I believe they're going to hold their position, Hugh, but I have a question for you. Both parties support baseline budgeting, so nobody is serious about the debt until both parties agree to get rid of baseline budgeting, which was instituted in the early 70s, as you know, and that's the reason why our debt's spinning out of control.
Well, that's true, but they're not going to do that right now. Right now, there is only one question, which is whether or not the Democrats can agree on how much to tax and what to raise. They want to double the death tax. They want to do it with stepped-away basis. They want to raise your taxes. They want to raise the capital gains tax. They want to spend money on all sorts of crazy stuff, Amtrak trains across the country, just crazy Green New Deal stuff. And the only question is whether or not the Democrats can agree among themselves unless the Republicans give them a hand. It really is. It's just nuts. It's just nuts. We should not do it. I hope you're right. John in Divide, Colorado. I haven't heard from you in a while, John. Are you here to say that you believe the Republicans this time?
Remember, Hugh, a pessimist is what an optimist calls a realist, and future performance is based off past performance. They'll cave by the end of next week.
No, they won't. You really are that pessimistic. Will you call me back and say you were right, Hugh? They're going to let the government show.
I hope you are right. I believe, given the last 20 years, I am right.
Okay, call me back and tell me I was right. I am right. They will not cave. Bill in Arizona, what do you think?
I think the Republicans are going to cave. I think we have a common theme going on here.
I do. I've had one caller say the Republicans won't cave. That's not really the kind of confidence you want in your party, is it?
It's not, and I disagree with what everybody's saying. It's like, historically speaking, I'm always get frustrated that they fold. And if you're right, I hope you're right. I want to call you back and say, Hugh, you nailed it. You're right again. But on this one, I don't think so.
You know, I'm going to edit all the tape and get you, Hugh, you nailed it. You were right again, even though you didn't say that. I'm going to make you say that because I have an editor. I don't have a producer, but I got an editor. Thank you, Bill. Randy in California, are you an optimist or a pessimist?
Hey, brother. I love your show, and I hope we can stay together and stay out of that Democratic mess.
I think we will, but I know you agree with me, but do you think Mitch
surely
and
do.
Kevin can keep them together?
One thing I could say about what was left on the tarmac in Afghanistan is it's costing, if you were amortized by Biden to date, he would owe $315 million for today's payment to have paid it off from the day he was inaugurated.
Well said. Okay, thank you, my friend. Ricardo in Tennessee.
Hey, buenos dias, Hugh.
Buenos dias.
So the question is, do the Republicans have a tough enough skin to beat off the press and all the negative press that they're going to say the Republicans are shutting down the government? There's babies not getting cribs and formulas. There's old people not getting medicines. There's puppies not getting milk. And
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Will they?
And you're saying that they are going to cave. They're going to.
No, they're not. They're not going to cave.
They're going to be led by Mitt Romney. In fact, for this instance, I'm going to call him Captain Cave.
No, Governor Romney will not cave on this. It's dollars and cents. It's fiscal responsibility. I know some of the people who really love President Trump really dislike Governor Senator Romney, but I know him. He's not going to cave on this. He's a fiscal conservative. Not going to happen. Ricardo, you call me back next week when I'm right. Dennis in Utah, are the Republicans going to cave?
No, but where did all those Obama phones come from?
Well, that was old tax and spend. There's a new round coming. They're Biden phones. Be well, Dennis. JR in Columbus, are the Republicans going to cave?
Absolutely, yes. They will cave. They do it every time. Every time. And I'm a registered Republican.
Are you going to call me back and admit I was right?
Yes, I will, and I'll be more than happy to eat that burger.
All right. All you people, when I am right and they don't cave, you call me back. They're not going to cave. Larry in Virginia, are they going to cave?
No, they're not. The only thing is, I'm like you. I don't like sugarcoating nothing. Mitch, I got a feeling he don't have the balls to stand up to them when they face
You can't actually say that on the radio. But you're right about Mitch, Larry. You just can't say that on the radio. All right, I'll be back. More calls, 1-800-520-1234. I can say relief factor on the radio. And I can say go get it. They sponsor this show, and for one reason, I use their product. I don't ever bring on anybody whose product I don't use. I never recommend anybody who I haven't sat down with, looked them in the eye, and talked to them. I know the guys that make relieffactor.com. I've talked with them endlessly, and I take their product every single day. Every single day. Why do I do that? Because it works. I carry curcumin, resveratrol, and omega. The only supplement I've ever taken in my life, I'm 65 years old. I take a vitamin, of course, and occasionally I'll take an extra vitamin C if I've got a cold. But the only supplement I've ever taken, relieffactor.com. Why? Because the science is good and the impact is wonderful. $19.95 will get you started. Join the tens of thousands of people who take it every day because they want to get rid of ease the pain of getting older or exercise. Do it today. relieffactor.com. Come back. 1-800-520-1234. Will the Republicans hold the line or will they cave? I'm Hugh Hewitt. Stay tuned.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
This clown, this loser, is stalking a woman in a Target. I don't even know where it was. I don't know what city this happened in. I haven't seen any media coverage. I just saw the clip, and I want to share it with you. Because as somebody tweeted out the question, what kind of a loser hangs out in a Target and harasses women? They should lock this guy up. This guy's walking around And if you have access and you can see the video, not only is he stalking this woman who's minding her own business and shopping in Target, but she doesn't have her mask on. And so he wants to take her on. I want to play this clip for you. This dummy is not only stalking and harassing this woman who wisely took out her phone to tape the whole incident, he's got a stupid badge on his ugly T-shirt. He's got a pin on that evidently says, "I'm vaccinated." Like, you got to go around and put a pin on your... Why don't you put a tattoo on your forehead that says you're vaccinated, dummy, you loser? Listen to this guy. Here's cut number 7. Listen to this exchange, because this woman whipped out her cell phone and recorded the whole incident.
Immunity a threat, but
Really? You're vaccinated?
yes, I am.
Oh, you are? Because I already have natural immunity.
Yeah.
You're not going to follow me around in the store and point at me to people, so I will video you.
So we have a state regulation that.
And it's not law. You're an idiot.
No. Oh, so you're going to insult me now? So my wife is a.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The Democratic Party somehow has convinced black people that they're the good guys. Never mind the skanky history of the Democratic Party. That was a party of slavery.
He said, listen, I gotta give these niggas enough. Not too much, but enough that I have them voting Democrat for the next 200 years.
The race grievance industry would have you believe that blacks get up and think about nothing else except race.
If I tell you this is racist, yeah, I'm gonna get you emotional.
There is a whole big cottage industry for racism. If racism went away, a lot of people would be unemployed.
The mob during the Minneapolis riots following the death of George Floyd. A bunch of white thugs, frankly, burning down the city's traditional black and Asian business district.
They're racist, 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 racist. Everything's racist.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Tesla was a genius. His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century.
You can stop an earthquake. Doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
This family can pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward. Right came in this morning.
salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Thank you for listening today. The biggest story of the day is, it's going to be the same story for a whole month. I'm getting you early on to this. The government's going to run out of money. It's going to run out of debt. So the House wants to pass a temporary spending bill to keep the government open, but they attached a debt limit to it because they got to borrow more money. Republicans will not vote for that. Mitch McConnell said no. Kevin McCarthy said no, because they want the Democrats to own their profligacy. They want the Democrats to figure out their taxing hikes, and they want the Democrats to figure out their spending profligacy, and they want to attach the debt limit to that. The Republicans are saying just say no. So the government's going to close next week. And Janet Yellen is warning the world's going to end. It's not. It's all a lie. And Democrats can do it. They got a majority. Democrats have the majority in the Senate. They have the majority in the House. They have the White House. All the Democrats have to do is agree among themselves. And they can roll right over the Republicans on everything. Everything. The Republicans have nothing to do with it. And so Mitch has said, nope, we're not going to have anything to do with it. Your problem, you broke it, you bought it. McCarthy has said, we're not going to have anything to do with it. You broke it, you bought it. And the press has begun to blame the Republicans. Will the Republicans fold? Debbie in Sarasota. You know, Debbie, Fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I are looking at pictures of Florida. We kind of like Florida. No income tax. We like Siesta Key. What do you think? The Hewitts in Florida?
Florida is wonderful. We have a wonderful governor who is holding back the floodgates of all the doom and gloom.
Yes, he is.
Probably going to be coming our way. He's wonderful. However, I do believe the Republicans will cave. History has shown it. Look, in 2016, we had the House, the Senate, the White House, and we could have done a lot of good for the American people, but they folded on almost everything.
No, they cut the
American
taxes.
people,
Donald Trump put up a tax package, and they passed it, and it We got to, before the virus, we were at 3% unemployment.
Yes, he was wonderful, and he slowed it down, but he really didn't have the Democratic support. And then we lost the House, and now we've lost the Senate, and they will cave because, listen, the biggest get-rich-quick scheme in the world is the American political system and the Congress. And they are
okay, Debbie, you're cynical. I hope you will call me back. I'm not going to move to Siesta Key unless you do and admit that I was right. They're not going to fold.
But we'll see. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Debbie. I love a call from Florida in the morning. Brandon in Columbus, Ohio. How are you, Brandon?
I'm just peachy, sir. How about yourself?
Great. Are the Republicans going to hold the line or are they going to fold?
Unfortunately, I have to agree with JR and your previous caller. They've too many of them beholden to donors and special interest groups, and I really hope that they do the right thing. But I don't think 10 will vote, but I think enough will vote that it makes a difference publicly.
It takes 10. It takes 10 Republicans to fold.
I know.
They're not there. And I don't think I think Senator Murkowski wants to get reelected in Alaska. Senator Collins is pretty tough on this stuff, actually. I don't think Mitt Romney, people disagree with him about Trump, but Mitt Romney's a hard-nosed fiscal conservative. They're not going to fold. They're not going to do it. All right, Brandon, call me back when I'm right. Mike in Louisville, Kentucky, 1-800-520-1234. What do you think, Mike?
I think they're going to stand firm.
Yes!
It's a do or die moment. You can't plead taxes, inflation, revenue, political responsibility, political accountability, courage, and then go, oh, well, here's your blank check. We cave.
100%. You cannot claim to be the party of responsibility and then cave just because the media doesn't like you. Thank you, Mike. I agree with you. Jim in Atlanta, will the Republicans fold?
If they can cut through the media and convince the American people that this is on the Democrats, not on us, then I think we'll be able to hold. But if we just sit on our hands and just sort of be Simon Pure and don't speak up and can't break through that very formidable wall, then we will fold.
That's why I am spending so much time on this today and will tomorrow and will every day during the upcoming government closure. Every day I'm going to come back and explain again. The Democrats have the House. The Democrats have the Senate. They have a 51-vote margin. They only need 51 votes. This is not a filibuster. All they have to do is agree on what to do on the reconciliation bill, and they can pass it. It's not about the Republicans. It's about the Democrats. That's all it is. Do you think that message will get through? Oh, Jim's gone.
I don't know.
It will, because I'm going to keep saying it every day. Thank you, Jim. Wally in Tampa. Hello, Wally.
Hey, Hugh, the Republicans will not fold.
I think you're right, and I'm glad to have it.
No, no. The scathing letters that I've been sending them in the mail, they have got. I believe they've got the message.
Well, keep sending them.
I love Tampa.
Well, I love Tampa too. Although there's a guy named Phil Mokrist down there who I taught how to golf, and every time I come down there, he wants strokes from me. And my other buddy Rob Ganeri lives down there. These are my high school buddies, and they want strokes, so I won't move to Tampa. They want strokes. Now, Dick Hauser Dick is a scratch golfer, and he's in Miami, so when I play golf with him, he'll give me strokes because he's a scratch golfer. But these guys are bandits, so I think I should move to Miami and not Tampa. Not sure. I'll go where I can get the strokes. I am hoping the Republicans give no strokes away, that they're as hard-nosed as Phil and Robbie, and not as generous as Dick, all right? Do not be the scratch golfer, Mitch and Kevin. Hold the line. We're going to work with you. Every Salem host is going to work with you. We are going to hold the line and just say no. Just say no. Thank you, America. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.